with the power that's being unlocked in these things, it's like I said, it's only a matter of time before you hear huge platinum records. I mean, shout out to like Madlib did, Freddie Gibbs Bandana. The entire record was done on the iPad. He talked about it in interviews. He created the whole
Wow.
thing.
I didn't hear that.
And Bandana was nominated for a Grammy.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So it's like these types of things, I think, are going to become like, you hear that now and everybody's like, wow, that's amazing, right? But I think in a short period of time, it's just going to be
commonplace, right?
Commonplace.
Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am your host, Vortex, from MobileMusicPro.com, your home for mobile music production. And I'm super excited to bring you guys another episode of this podcast because yet again, we've brought on some amazing developers to share their experiences and insights. Now, we won't just have developers on this show, but it is always interesting whenever they get a chance to stop by. Now, this month's Roundtable isn't going to have quite as many guests as prior episodes did, as we did have a few cancellations, but there is still plenty of great discussion to be had. Since there was only 2 panelists, we actually got through quite a few topics in just about an hour's time. And I'm sure you'll agree there's still plenty of gems here. And finally, I just wanted to thank both our panelists so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, both good and bad, and I hope to have you both on the show again in the future. And so, without further ado, let's get right into this 5th episode of the podcast, and I very much hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the 5th episode of the Mobile Music Roundtable podcast, right here on the Mobile Music Pro channel. As always, we have a super special episode for you guys today because we have some developers here that I want to talk about. I was actually going to have a couple more people scheduled, but some people couldn't make it, so it's just going to be a little bit fewer people this time, but I think it's going to be great because we're going to get through a lot more topics and get to know these guys a lot better. So with us today, we have a couple of different people, guys, today. First, we have Josh from Audio Modern, the creators of Core Jam, Playbeat, and Riffer. Josh, how are you doing today, bro?
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Really glad to have you here. I know you got a lot of stuff to say, man. You got a lot of talents we're going to get into. It's going to be great. Next up, Nuno. Yeah, next up, we got Nuno, the founder and developer of Imaginando, creators of the LK, visual synthesizer, frames, and much more. Nuno, how you doing, bro?
Hey, how are you? Me? Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invitation.
Appreciate it. Yeah. I really appreciate everybody being here, guys. Again, a couple other people couldn't make it, so we're going to try to make this the best we can. And I mean, I know we will because there's a lot of stuff to go over. But first, I just want to actually learn a little bit more about you guys, if that's all right with you. So let's start out with you, Nuno. First, what is your background and what do you do over there at Imaginando and how'd you get started?
My background is basically engineering. I've studied computer science. And and I was I have an interest for electronic music for a long time, for 20 years, 20 and some years, and yeah, I really wanted to know how to create sound with technology, with the computer, how to generate sound. So while I was studying, I wanted to try to use what I learned to make these tools, and just for curiosity. And yeah, I founded the company 8 years ago. So since then, I've been trying to build the tools that were inspiring me more to
Absolutely, man. And I gotta say, LK is a fantastic app too. A lot of people rely on that. A lot of people use that in conjunction with AUM and other apps as well. But man, you got a ton of apps out there, so I definitely make sure to encourage everybody to check out Imaginando apps. They also made a visual synthesizer, which is such a great app. I know a lot of people are creating some. Yeah, exactly. I know a lot of people are creating some great videos from that for sure.
Yeah, the VS born from I think it's quite common these days to see iOS musicians doing screen recording with their devices. So I thought, and what if we could transform or get that musical information, MIDI and audio, to generate the visuals along the way without having to export everything and then work with LumaFusion to work on effects. In some way, it works, and some users have already proven that with their creative use of VS.
I for sure know that my iPad can't run it super well, especially when I got a bunch of tracks on there. It definitely takes the CPU power. So if you guys are going to run it, definitely make sure you got a little bit of a faster device for sure. But
CPU, the M1 came to change the whole market with powerful CPU, but the GPUs aren't there yet for VS, you know.
For sure.
And it definitely needs GPU juice.
Absolutely. But hey, we're getting there. It is definitely really fun. I encourage everybody to check out because you can already make some pretty fantastic stuff with it. So we got to move on to Josh here next. Josh, what's going on? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, man, and your company and how you got started?
Yeah, so I am a freelance software engineer, and I'm also a content creator. I'm a musician. So I've been an active musician, a professional musician for about 15 years now. And I've been a freelance software developer for about 3 years. I've worked with a couple different companies, most recently Audio Modern. I helped work on the iOS version for Playbeat 3. Really excited about that. Came out great. Worked with some great engineers on that who were super talented. And then, in addition to that, I also am a musician. I've studied classical music and jazz at Berkeley and Juilliard. And then a couple of years went back to school to learn software engineering to try to develop my own applications so I could, use it as another way to distribute content as part of my content. So create a lot of big band, soul, brassy stuff. I have some stuff on tracklib.com for all your people who are maybe familiar with that. It's an awesome sample pack site that I'm up on there. My stage name under that is Static Link. I've been producing under that name for about 10 years now. And in addition to that, like I said, I do some freelance development, and that's kind of my story.
So. Awesome, man. Yeah, looking forward to learning even more about you guys, because you both have some amazing and incredible apps out there that I know I use, and I know a lot of my friends use. So first, let's go with Nuno and ask this question. Then we'll go back to you, Josh. Nuno, what inspired you to actually start making these apps and actually start programming it specifically on the iPad too?
Well, when the iPad came out in 2008, I was still working on a company, and I was developing a touchscreen technology. And when the iPad came out, it was a touchscreen device, and I wanted to have one, and I wanted to try to program something for it. By that time, I was DJing a lot. And I was using Ableton, so I just thought I could make an Ableton Live controller, and that was like the primary goal. And I started working on that controller, and it eventually came out as a really simple controller for Ableton as Live Control, and in late 2011. Well, for the next 2 years. Started working on more features and on an Android version, and until I realized myself that I was doing more with the apps than the salary of the company, So I decided to take the leap and found the company. So I quit my job and I started Imaginando alone and had to do all by myself.
All right. Hey, that's the entrepreneurial spirit we're looking for around here. That's awesome, man.
Awesome.
Yeah. And yeah, it was incredibly challenging because I have spent 4 years working alone.
I know that feeling. Entrepreneurs, we all know that feeling.
And since I started programming my own apps, basically I stopped making music or DJing. No more time.
It takes up all your time.
Basically, yeah. So yeah, and then in 2015, I've joined forces with my best friend Rui, which is an incredibly talented musician and analog electronics enthusiast. So he basically we basically joined forces to create DRC. So DRC is incredibly well physically modeled because he knows a lot of synthesizers. He repairs synthesizers. He knows the heart of the synthesizers, electronics, and we came out with DRC in 2015. And since then, we have been trying to expand the range of products and improving. This is something we really like to do, is release a product and ensure it gets better. And we listen a lot to customer feedback, and we try to make it match the user expectation while keeping the roadmap and the expectation we have for the product itself. You know,
I have to second that too. You really took. I've seen a lot of user feedback on the forums and specifically like the Audio Bus forum and such. And you've taken pretty much every single feedback into account. The bugs have been fixed, the issues have been resolved, and so it continues to get better and better.
LK has been a really special case because LK is like a really it was the first one. It's a very complex application because it started as an Ableton Live controller only, but when we decided but all the modules, the other modules like the MIDI pads module, the MIDI keyboard module, the XY, all those modules could work in live mode or MIDI mode, where you could simply connect the USB interface and send MIDI message to external devices. But we wanted to do that with the Matrix module as well. So when we first made that, we had to create a sequencer from the ground up. All the mechanics of keep inserting notes, sequencing notes, and that work only started when I started to have more help. When I first have another developer working with me, because this was a really enormous amount of work, and since then we have been trying to I think the major leap was when we took it to AUV3, because we started to have a lot of feedback and people actually using a lot. So we like to iterate over user feedback.
Well, I like the AUV3 version. I definitely have used it in CUBASIS for a number of different things for sure. So, but hey, I want to get back to Josh here as well and find out from Josh, like, what inspired you to start working? Because I love hearing these stories, like Nuno just said, about how he got started. And what inspired you to actually start making iPad apps specifically?
So actually, yeah. So, for me, I've been kind of an Apple fanboy for some time, actually. So I've been using iOS for a long time, pretty much since the first iPhone came out. I've had pretty much each version over the years, and I was an early adapter of the iPad, just like Nuno was saying. I was really fascinated with the device. And I felt like it had a lot of potential for the future of being, a musician. Specifically for me, when I was in school, I used to use it to write notation, like write music, like when I was studying in college.
Very cool.
And that kind of got me into doing stuff on the iPad. I didn't really get into heavy like compositional or production beats and stuff like that probably until about maybe 2 years ago, just because, to be honest with you, I felt like the quality and the resources on the machine weren't quite there yet for the kind of production that I was doing. It lagged, sometimes it would crash, and there was a lot of cool things I felt it could do, and the potential was there. But about 2 years ago,
it's really interesting how long it took iPad to get there, but we got M1s in there now. But sorry, go ahead.
Right, exactly, yeah, and for me, I think it was around the time the first iPad Pro came out, and when the architecture changed on the A chips that they were putting out, and I thought, okay, this is the future, and I want to get on the ground level. And so that kind of actually around the time when I got the first iPad Pro was also around the time that I started studying, iOS development. And really, I started with Objective-C because that was still kind of the thing, and ended up getting into Swift a little bit later on. So I kind of had a background in that thing, and I was doing it independently, kind of my free time between me, putting out records and making library music and that kind of thing. And then, like I said, about 2 years ago, I decided to go back to school and, study and try to make it a more serious thing. Just because, like I said, I just looked at it as, okay, this is a way for me to control the textures on my tones and different things like that, and kind of, really make it my own thing. And started doing a lot of freelance work. Like I said, it really, for me, actually, how I actually got into the industry, like, and started doing work for other people, was mainly as a consultant. Like, for me, it was mostly, companies. I worked with Roland for Zen Beats for a little bit, just with their team as a consultant. Like, how does this work? Where's things we can do to fix this? That kind of thing, and kind of being a liaison between like producer world and people I knew. Also with the software background, to be able to communicate that a little bit better with their team. And I would talk directly to their developers, Matt Presley, he's their director over there for their development team. He's an amazing guy, really good friend of mine. Like, we talk, he's cool dude.
Shout out to Zen Beats.
Yeah.
Fantastic app.
So I was using it for a while, and that's actually, and it's interesting because they've come a long way. I remember when it first came out, it would crash a lot, and there were some restrictions there on how it worked. And I feel like they've taken a lot of the feedback, that's come through from the community and really improved on that. And then I was doing that for a while. And then I was approached by Katarina and Max from Audio Modern to work on Playbeat as they were trying to move some of their applications over into the iOS world from desktop applications. They have had,
because they started in desktop.
Right. Yep. And they had iOS versions that were available. It's just that they were they didn't run very well, right? So they were trying to make them work better. And then they had, as you guys know, recently they announced all this AI stuff using the smart functionality for Playbeat, which is great. Learns users.
It's been amazing. But Playbeat and Riffer, by the way, fantastic apps.
And it it's learning the functionality of the user to make creativity faster. And I think that's something that's very important. Something that I think about with my own stuff that I'm doing is, like, you don't want to be a barrier between the creative and their tool, that they're using to create. So because I've run into that before, where I have this amazing idea in my head, but I can't find the right tone, or I can't find the right texture that I need for this, and it's awesome to have something that kind of learns what you're looking for, to be able to create quicker and get those ideas out of your head faster.
For sure.
But with Playbeat, I worked on that for a little bit on the iOS side. It was great. Obviously excellent.
I'll say Core Jam still runs a little bit still slow, but it's there's a lot of stuff that Core Jam is doing in the background. So
right, exactly. Yeah, and
it's a fantastic app.
And there's improvements that are being done, in the background on those all the time.
For sure.
We're constantly working on that kind of thing. It's been great, and more recently, like I said, I've gotten more back into creating more content again and working on individual projects for myself. I'm currently working on like distortion and reverb effect on my own time that I'm going to be releasing as like my own independent project as part of like the sample pack stuff I put out.
Very cool.
That's specific for it's really targeted for iOS users.
Oh man, you got to make sure to tag me on that when that releases, bro.
For sure. But yeah, that's why when you asked to come on the show, I was super excited because I thoroughly believe this is the future of music production. I think that
I just put out that article, 5 reasons why iOS is the future of music production. Check it out on our blog. Go ahead. Sorry.
There you go. You see, no, man, plug it, because I agree. That's so true. I think it's one of those things where, like, for me, like I was telling you guys earlier, I do a lot of compositions that are like very big band brass sections, strings oriented. So not only do I spend a lot of time in my home studio working on stuff, but I also spend a lot of time at a regular recording studio recording stuff too. And like, just have to like carry a computer and different things like that. It's nice to be able to have something that can go on the go and something that's just incredible on battery life, right? Because that's like a huge thing as well.
Absolutely.
Where I've had sessions where I've created songs that have been sampled by some big time artists that were created on an iPad. You know what I mean? And I created it like one I did last summer sitting on the beach with my wife. Like, I was actually working on my iPad and I started the structure of it on the iPad. You see what I'm saying? So I feel like that kind of thing is going to become more and more common as time moves on. And, thanks to incredible developers like Nuno and his team is doing, and, the stuff that the Audio Modern team's doing, we're getting to a place where like it's a reality now, especially with M1, like Nuno was saying. Like, that's,
that's a game changer. Yeah, my opinion is a game changer.
Processor inside of a mobile device. Something that we've been asking for, and I think once we figure out how that actually works with Mac or with the iPad OS, because I think there's a lot of restrictions there still.
Sure.
And they're starting to unlock more as they go. I think that we'll start to see kind of this, I don't obviously know Apple's future, but I could see them going more towards, especially as these rumors about glasses and other things that are going to be coming into play in augmented reality, where it's going to become more about mobile devices and the operating system is becoming one operating system that's across all platforms where there's no restrictions. I really do see that as the future. And I think, with the power that's being unlocked in these things, that's, it's like I said, it's only a matter of time before you hear huge platinum records. I mean, shout out to like Madlib did, Freddie Gibbs' Bandana. The entire record was done on the iPad. He talked about it in interviews.
Wow. I didn't hear that.
And Bandana was nominated for a Grammy.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So it's like these types of things I think are going to become like, you hear that now and everybody's like, wow, that's amazing. Right. But I think in a short period of time, it's just going to be
commonplace, right?
Commonplace.
I mean, that's what I'm hoping, because as you know, producers are, most humans are, we're relatively tribal. We're relatively scared to try new things, and so we kind of wait until somebody else tries it before we hop on that bandwagon, right? So we really are waiting for some larger artists to just some big artists and definitely influential artists to be able to use more and more of the iPad, and then let people know that they're doing it. So then people can say, well, hey, look, so and so is using it, and so is using it, and so, right? So and we have, of course, we've had some major people use it. I mean, Gorillaz and a bunch of other people as well, and then the people you said. So but we don't really hear about it too often, even though we know that they're on tour and they're using GarageBand for a lot of their stuff. So it makes sense for them to just use it on the iPad as well.
It's funny because I was actually just a guest on another podcast with another artist that he goes by Lefty. He's like a disco house artist, but he's part of a band called Cobra Starship from years ago that was fairly big.
I think I heard of that. Yes.
So, and he was saying on there that they have a platinum record. One of their largest records ever was actually produced in GarageBand. I mean, this was years ago on the computer.
Yep. He's
like, it's funny because people automatically assume it's Logic, right? Yep. Or they automatically assume it's this high dollar software. And I think that's part of what you were just saying is the stigma around you have to have this high end quality gear. Honestly, man, I always tell I'm an educator as well. I was telling you guys off camera that I do a lot of education based stuff as well. And I always tell students that are going through programs that it doesn't matter what you use. All these are tools of creative ability, right? It's like the paintbrush you use, right? I mean, the ideas are there. And I think as a software developer, my goal is to try to make it work with teams that are trying to make it easier for people to get those ideas out. So music is more accessible to everyone. And it's not a barrier of entry where you have to learn these incredibly hard things, to learn how to even, get an idea out.
Complex software, signal flow, drivers, all of these crazy things happen on the desktop. But I want Nuno to come in here. I know he's got something to say. And just so you know, guys, you can feel free to jump in. Feel free to jump in anytime, Nuno or Josh.
I was actually saying goodbye to my colleague.
Oh, okay, no problem. But yeah, Nuno, I want to hear your thoughts on Josh's commentary there, Nuno, and then I got another question for you guys. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think these are definitely tools that allows anyone to do small sketches. In my opinion, I still find that if I want to do something on Ableton, I will do it quicker than I do on iOS apps, even that I'm doing the program. I feel that it's a little more bureaucratic to do some kind of things because while it's practical to do sound sketches, if you want to compose a full timeline, maybe with a mouse and a keyboard, you can do it faster.
I actually use a mouse and keyboard, by the way, on my iPad. I actually use
I forgot that I can connect a keyboard and a mouse to the iPad.
Absolutely, I love it.
You guys are far more advanced users than I am on iOS. I spend much more of my time programming and launching the app on the device than using it. And that makes a lot of difference.
And that's what user feedback is for, right? And your company, of course, has been listening to a ton of user feedback, which I've seen with LK. So absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's actually Nuno brings up a really good point. I think there is a barrier right now when it comes to mobile devices with touch functionality, right? I think that it is getting better, obviously, but it is still quicker to do stuff. I would agree with that 100%. And even with me, even though that I'm a definite proponent of using the iPad and shouting it from the rooftops that it's the future, there still are some limitations. And for me, it still is used primarily for sketches, or skeletons of projects that I end up finishing on my computer anyways. So it, you know,
I think
it
that
also,
I think that speaks to where we are, right, in the iPad's evolution of where it's going to go. First, it was kind of a toy. Now it's a full on. You can actually full on sketch stuff, and you can actually produce, you know, certain stuff. And then I think the next step is just full on orchestral, like, right, whatever you want to do.
And if you
sorry, go ahead, Nuno. We'll go back to you, Josh.
And if you compare it with Android, it is uncomparable because let's say 10 years ago you could compare both, because you could play audio apps on both. Well, the performance on Android has always been terrible in terms of latency and the ability to compute lots of information in small chunks of audio callbacks.
It's really bad.
As soon as you start to have a plugin loading capabilities inside a host, that completely changed the scene.
Absolutely. I think CUBASIS, you know, I mean, has been changing the scene as well, like introducing keyboard shortcuts. That's really great. So now I can actually use my keyboard that I already have hooked up to my iPad, things like that, and the mouse. And, you know, we spoke about this during the last roundtable, where we're not trying to change the iPad into a desktop. We just want some of the desktop features and capabilities brought down to the iPads. Because, for example, I still love touching my plugins. I still love adjusting and touching my plugins and my my instruments, doing certain tweaks with my actually touching it, but with just, you know, moving around the DAW, moving around audio clips, right, loading stuff, I got to have my mouse. It's just so much more quicker. But it all depends on what your workflow is. And just recent, and we say this to say that the iPad is continuing to advance to the point now it's becoming a little indistinguishable from the desktop, a little bit, but it's still, of course, a very, very different device.
Yeah, and I think you're tethered down too by hardware in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Because, for example, even if, you know, like for me, if I'm recording something like my saxophone or one of my brass instruments, I can record on the iPad if I want to, but I still have to have a recording interface, right? So I still have to have something hanging off the side of it. You know what I mean?
Which I do. My whole desk back there is dedicated to the iPad because I need speakers, a recording interface, controllers.
Right. And so, you know, I think, you know, one thing for me too on the go, like I'm using my AirPods, there's still latency issues with the AirPods. You know, maybe future iterations of Bluetooth will change that. I mean, we don't know where it's going, but like it's difficult. I mean, it's still, I would still say that we're definitely at a point where you can make full songs, and there are full records being made for sure on these devices. But it is kind of where it still has to go to the computer in a certain sense for certain situations to make it actually work properly. So yeah,
and of course, if you're like some big huge artist, that thing's going off to a Grammy award-winning mixing and mastering engineering way of
exactly.
You know, so.
Yes, right. Where you could create the song on the iPad and then send the stems off.
If it's going to be on the radio or streaming service, it's all going to go to Pro Tools.
Sure. Yeah, man, for sure.
But yeah, I definitely agree with you, and I think we can see that the trajectory. That's what's key here, is to see these points in time, these specific milestones get executed on our way to the goal of course, having parity pretty much with the desktop. And that's what I outlined in that blog article about 5 reasons why iOS is the future of music production, because one of those things was the M1. And that is one of the things that's sort of bringing it to parity with the desktop. And I think Apple putting that in there, they issue to the world, they signal to the world that, look, they want this thing to be as fast as the desktop at some point. They definitely want to try. And though they don't want it to replace their laptop line, their MacBook line, or anything like that, they do want it. They do realize its significance and its niche and its specialty and the reason why it's special. So I think that, and that's what I think all the iOS music production, the entire ecosystem can look at and look forward to, because we can see, look, Apple's on board. If Apple's on board, then let's go. So let's get to the next question here I have for you guys, which is let's go with Nuno here and then go to Josh. Nuno, what are like some of maybe one or two or some of the most exciting things in the iOS music space that's exciting you right now, that's inspiring you right now to make more apps or maybe even make more music? What are the couple things that's really interesting or inspiring you or exciting in the iOS music space for you right now?
That's actually a challenging question, but I think the diversity for good and for bad, because we have all this diversity. Almost every week there's a new app doing any particular thing, and this is only possible because we have this new generation of independent developers. People like Josh that that are musicians for 15 years, but now they learn how to program and they want to create their own apps. So we have this phenomenon multiplied by thousands, right? And this brings a lot of creativity to the table. This brings new stuff every single day. And then the community. I think there is a really strong community around this this topic, and I haven't felt this sense of community for a long time. I've never been a person of playing around in forums and write, but in this case, I've become more close to the community, and I really feel that this community is really engaging and contributing to the scene in general.
Absolutely, could not agree more. I mean, we got the Audio Bus forum, we got the Facebook groups, and then the Reddit as well. So we're kind of everywhere. The iOS music production people are fans everywhere, and we have kind of stuff everywhere. Now we just gotta watch it grow, and we've been seeing the Reddit forums grow, the numbers, the Facebook groups grow. I mean, the forum, everything, is kind of going like that, including Mobile Music Pro. We started we're in our year 3 now. So we started 2 years ago and some change. And, everything's been just from the beginning, just nice and slow and steadying up. And I think that's the case for the entire iOS music production space. We just keep adding, we just keep building, we just keep adding more, creating more things. And then, of course, that is a loop that goes into the community, and then the community gives feedback, and then we keep going. So it's just this beautiful time where we can all share together that we're creating together. So very, very great comment. Josh, what are your comments on this, man? What are your comments on what Nuno said, and what is a couple things maybe that's exciting you as well in this space?
I agree with pretty much everything Nuno said. I could echo that, perfectly. I mean, I think also the other side of that is also being an independent developer, the acceptance into the development community. He's talking about forums. We're talking about forums on, from a creative standpoint, but also the Juice forum, Stackflow. You're finding more stuff on there like that where people are talking and they're helping more with people like myself who are independent and trying to find opportunities to get more experience. And the community has been very acceptance. They accept me, when I come in. I went to the thing in November out in London for the Audio Developer Conference, and everybody was extremely helpful, extremely nice. And I think that's also really welcoming from somebody like myself who's kind of an outsider coming in, from the creative background more, and trying to learn more about the technical side and create new tools, to be used for musicians. So, I mean, I think, kudos to everybody in that community who've been very helpful. Communities like, for example, the Audio Programmer is another great one. Josh is an amazing individual. He's offered me a lot of help, connected me with a lot of different people, so that kind of thing is really cool too. As far as the where we are in the world of what's really impressing me, I guess, right now is probably this move towards this one operating system, essentially, right? Where everything is able to bridge across multiple platforms fairly easy. For me, for example, I'm a huge fan of the FabFilter suite. Love FabFilter stuff. I use it. I use it on my laptop, and I use it also on my iPad. And the fact is with Zenbeats, for example, I can actually save it on Zenbeats and pull it up on my computer, and it's still there, and it's the same settings.
With all the same plugins.
It's all the same stuff, so it's just that kind of thing for me. I use Ableton and Zenbeats mostly for all of my stuff, just so everybody knows. And it's interesting that we're moving towards that way where, a lot of developers are releasing applications on both platforms, and you can save stuff between them. I think that's huge, as far as portability. So if I need to go somewhere, I can leave, I can still continue working on it. And then when I come back home, it's easily pull it up. And there's, sometimes, I'm not going to lie, there's still bugs that you run into where stuff doesn't load or that kind of thing. But for the most part, it's a lot better than what it was, and I think even in the 2 years that I've really been getting into it seriously, it's been, ramping up at a rapid pace.
And I think that's going to continue into this decade specifically. We are going to see much more merging, because we're seeing things like where you can now use your mouse to cross over from the iPad to the Apple desktop, things like that. We're seeing more of this, and like you say, people releasing plugins both desktop and iOS, and allowing the saving of those, configuration settings between the two. And I think that is going to be the one of the next big things that's going to come up in this decade, is the ability to use stuff on mobile and then open it up on desktop and vice versa. That's going to be a really big thing that Apple, I think, is targeting. Nuno, did you have something?
Yeah, that was one of our main goals when we starting working on apps. It was the portability, and we wanted to do all the apps for iOS and Android, but with time that became a little impossible because of the architecture limitations.
You found out pretty quick that Android's latency is ridiculous.
When we made DRC, one of the key concepts we wanted to have was a cloud sync preset bank, and DRC has that feature. You can save a preset on the cloud bank, and then you go to the desktop version and you can load from the cloud bank the preset. So that was the key principle in mind: doing something on the phone on the move, and then get back to the computer and have the sound you have just made when you weren't out of home.
That is so cool. That is so cool. And that's, that's another thing I'd like to encourage iOS developers to do as well. If they do have a desktop version of their app, definitely make sure that those settings, at least the very basic settings, are all saved across devices. And that, because you can't imagine how much that helps people that are trying to get into this music space that maybe are still on the desktop, that are trying to get more into the mobile form factor of things. And that's going to really, really, really help them if they can save settings across. And of course, Zenbeats is taking it to a whole other level, making their entire DAW actually across platform. Yeah. But we can hope for that. We're hoping for Logic one day, on iOS and things like that. But until then, we do.
I thought it was going to happen this last time around.
We all thought that. But it's going to happen one day. They're going to do it somehow. Obviously, they can't. They're putting the M1 in the iPad, so they're not trying to ignore it or anything like that.
The problem, in my opinion, lies on the price, and this is a controversial topic for sure, because Logic costs $300 or €300 on the Mac App Store. Do you think iOS community is willing to pay €300 for an app?
Cubase is $200 on the desktop, and people are complaining about the $50 price of Cubasis. So I'm going to say no.
I would agree with that. I would second that.
And basically, I think if for one end we have these amazing opportunities created by independent developers bringing their stuff, then there is the survival aspect of it. Let's say you are in US and the cost of living in US, it's much more expensive than in Portugal. You have you have to pay a rent for your house, you have to survive, you have to eat, you have to transport yourself from one place to another. You need money. So and your application starts to decay in terms of sales. What you need to do? A new app. And does that app is that app going to cost a lot? No, it can't, because the users are not willing to pay for it. So this is complicated. So finding the right business model in this world is really complicated. There is an incredible balance between, because if you start doing more things, you will have more work updating them, and if you don't update, people just start to ignore your product, even if it is a very good one. If it keeps behind, it will be forgotten. So yeah.
We spoke about this, last time too. The different business models and stuff. I definitely encourage people to check out that episode, because there was some interesting things, like Loopy, the Loopy Pro developer, is doing something where you can pay one time for the app and you get the app forever. But if you want future updates longer than a year, then you gotta, pay another price again every single year to get the new update. And I think that's an interesting balance. There's many different choices and things that you can do. Another choice is creating more and more in-app purchases. But I think there is a variety of solutions out there. But it is challenging, absolutely, right now when the entire ecosystem is expecting your app to be less than $20. That's just not sustainable, in my opinion, over a long time. When I'm talking about not 5 years, I'm talking about 10, 20, 30 years. It's not sustainable over that amount of time. So I think that is going to change and the prices are going to have to rise a little bit. And that's a little bit controversial, but that's just the nature of the beast. Like, prices are going to rise just because of inflation, but they do have to start getting a little bit more expensive. And even the Koala developer said, Merrick, he was like, I know that if I raise my price 5x, I'm going to get 5x less downloads, and 5x less purchases, which means 5x less people will be able to experience my app. So it's challenging, and with the expectations of the ecosystem right now. But I am very, very hopeful because we see it working on the desktop, sustaining developers all day long. So I think eventually we can bring that to the iOS without a developer having to create 20 apps per year. But we'll see how it goes.
The image around the iPad as well.
Yes.
I think it's still viewed as kind of like the secondary production, device where, people are like, well, if I spend it on this, I think I don't know. I haven't looked into this too much from the business perspective, to be quite honest with you. And this is obviously a bridge I'm going to have to cross at some point working on my own stuff. But my thing is, trying to figure out, okay, if I buy it on one device, if I sell it on the App Store, I know it's going to go across all the devices. But if I'm selling it individually, because I think a lot of developers are, putting their stuff on the App Store to go on iOS, but then when it comes to the Mac version, they're selling it on their own site because obviously Apple takes their percentages, right? And I understand the reason behind that. And so I essentially, I'm like, okay, and I think, Gospel Musician I think is a really good example of this. I know he was, we talked about him possibly being on today, but, it's one of those things where I think if there is a future where this becomes one piece, I think we'll start seeing better stuff coming to the mobile devices because you'll be able to purchase it on one place and you'll be able to use it across all your devices. You know what I mean? And it'll just be, easy, as far as financially more justifiable to say, okay, I can buy this because I know it's going to work on all my stuff and I'm not going to have to buy it twice, because that was my issue, honestly, with FabFilter. I couldn't, like Nuno said, FabFilter was $100 for the suite on the iPad. It's literally the same app. You know what I mean? It's crazy, and so I was like, you go over to the desktop version, it's like $200 per app.
Per plugin. Yep.
Where the suite was $100, like I said, on the iPad, so it's just like, I think it's one of those situations where we just need to see more hype around it as its own production device or its own, device to create on before we really see that lacks a little bit as far as the cost associated and more people investing into higher dollar applications.
Absolutely. And I think it's just a matter of time. Just things have to happen. It's just too early, guys. Like, the iPad only came out, in 2012, roughly. The AUV3 standard only came out in 2016, only really started really getting used in 2018. CUBASIS 3 just came out in just a year ago or two. It's very, very, and just look at these versions: CUBASIS 3, BeatMaker 3, right? We were very, very early. So I just think that for the most part, people underestimate, what's going to happen, overestimate what's going to happen in the next year, and then they underestimate what's going to happen in the next 10. Because throughout the course of this decade, I think we're going to achieve milestone after a milestone where people are going to recognize this device more and more as not just maybe a music production device, but as an everything device. Because you can edit 4K video, you can play video, you can. They're bringing down audio. They're bringing down the programming suite now to where you can start programming even apps on the iPad. And in fact, and I do kind of want to get into that actually next. That might be a segue because let me ask. Let's ask Nuno first. What are your thoughts on this new platform being brought down to the iPad? What is the name of it? I forget. It's the IDE, the developing environment. Playgrounds. Yes, I believe Playground. Yep. So what are your thoughts, Nuno, on this? And I'll ask you too, Josh. What are your thoughts on Apple bringing Playgrounds to the iPad for the purpose of programming, apps and music and games? What do you think that this is again another play of them trying to make this device be powerful and more powerful into this decade as it goes on?
I maybe have missed something. What is Playground?
Oh, so Playgrounds. Playgrounds is this. So if you haven't known, AudioKit even has a couple of tutorials out there for using this new Playgrounds app on your iPad. But it's essentially a developing environment on your iPad. that you can literally program and compile apps for on your iPad. So that I think is a big step and a big milestone for Apple, saying, look, we believe in this device so much, we're actually going to allow you to program apps on this device. But Josh, maybe do you know a little bit about it? Have you?
Yeah,
okay.
I've actually been using it.
Oh wow! So maybe you can give me some of your thoughts on that real quick, and then I'll have Nuno comment on those.
Yeah, sure. So actually, it's funny because I was like super excited about this, man. Because like when they announced the M1, I was like, okay, they're going to start really. This is the beginning of what I've been talking about this entire podcast, of them merging their operating systems together. I really thought that was the direction we were going to go, right? Which is funny because we had iOS, and then they kind of split off into iPad OS and iOS. You know what I mean?
Still don't understand that, but
yeah, it's eventually going to go back together. But now we're talking about, earlier we talked about how we were hoping Logic was going to come to the M1. I was hoping some version of Xcode was going to come over too, to be able to develop on the go.
Absolutely.
Transfer sessions back and forth.
For those that don't know, Xcode is the main development environment that people program apps on the Mac for.
Yes. Yep. So, Playgrounds has always been there. I used Playgrounds very early when I was learning Swift, you know what I mean? And it's been an application that's been out there to learn, it had some cool animations to do some basic, learning functions and classes and structures, different things like that. Very, the fundamentals of being like a software or software engineer or programmer. So when I heard that they were bringing some of the functionality for Xcode into Playgrounds, I was kind of surprised they kept the Playgrounds name, because it's kind of misleading, because you can develop full apps.
Yeah, it's like a mini Xcode. I mean,
it really is.
Yeah.
No, there's limitations. And I honestly, I was quite blown away when I found out that you could use, we could use AudioKit and third-party, libraries with that. I thought for sure that was going to be the restriction, to be honest with you. And I know that everything doesn't work.
And Apple could have done that. Apple could have restricted, but they don't want to. They really are just pulling out restriction after restriction for the iPad.
Yeah. So AudioKit, I actually like AudioKit, and I've been studying a little bit more. It does have some limitations, versus Juice. So for your listeners who may or may not be familiar, Juice is a C++ based library that a lot of developers use. A lot of applications are built on that backbone. I'm sure you probably discussed it before, but AudioKit is kind of the Swift version of that, essentially. And, I've been trying to get more into that because I do like the Swift language quite a bit, to be honest with you. It's really easy to use, it takes less space, it's much faster as far as being able to get ideas out. So when this came out, I started playing around with it and I was blown away. I've actually been building some, I started like a basic sampler, and this goes back to being like what we were talking about earlier, about being to do stuff on the go. So like, for example, I'll be sitting out on my couch, watching TV, commercial comes on, I'm on my iPad working on it a little bit. Show comes back on, I start watching the show, and saying I don't have to have this laptop, battery life's great, you know what I mean, and I can do all that kind of stuff. I haven't deployed anything to the App Store yet because I'm not really sure how that works, as far as like uploading stuff, because I'm not quite there yet.
Still testing stuff out.
Yeah. So and from what I understand, it's actually fairly simple to do. They have a lot of different, like, you can do like pre-built like app icons and stuff like that. They are really trying to make it more accessible to the future generation. And this goes kind of like I was talking to you guys about earlier, where I really feel like this is another step in the direction. I tell my wife all the time that I feel like programmers are going to be like the mechanics of the future, essentially.
They already are, man. Like, as Andreesen Horowitz says, right? Software is eating the world. It's pretty much eating it at this point.
And there's going to be people who are really, really good at it, who are sought after. But I think having a basic understanding of it and understanding like how to fix small things on your own, or be able to do, little scripts that can help like you creatively, I think that's going to become commonplace, in the next few years. And I see more schools are offering and teaching it now, not just at the collegiate level, but also in high school and middle school. Kids are learning like basic programming now. And I think, Apple's smart, because basically what they did is they took something they knew was in classrooms, right? They know these are in classrooms. They know people are using them as books now, with their digital books. And they're like, now we can have kids learn our language. And this is a wave, I think, also not just in the music realm, but also with just Swift kind of starting to take over the world, essentially. It
kind of is. Because the iPad is taking over the world, the most popular programming environment and language for the iPad is going to start to have a big influence. So that makes sense.
Sure. And to be honest with you too, Apple has also, like, this is also kind of off topic, but Apple has a great like education structure for teachers to learn, and gives them like, using the playground applications. This is what this is the mods you're going to use. And here's the answer. And here's the book to hand to your kids. And they can go through all this kind of stuff. Like I was looking at all this stuff. And I think like what we're seeing with music, for example, I mean, like I taught saxophone at a middle school 2 years ago. I was there for a couple of years, and we used the iPad like in class for like our digital music stuff, and for background tracks, like in percussion and metronome and everything like that. This is becoming a part of the education model in America, and I think that's kind of, they know, man, they're smart, and they're like, okay, we're going to give these to everybody. We're going to make it accessible. We're going to get people interested into programming and being able to build stuff. Oh, and by the way, we're not going to put these restrictions. You can build whatever you want. So if you're interested in building music applications, here you go.
And by the way, we're going to make the iPads cheaper and more powerful every single year.
Yeah, it's just crazy. It's crazy, dude. How powerful they get every year is also just mind blowing. That's another conversation. But,
absolutely. Well, I want to have Nuno comment on this too, man, because man, this is a lot of great information. You can tell that iPad. You can see what iPads do, you can see what Apple is doing here with the iPad. They're putting M1 chips in it. They're bringing programming environments into it. They're making the ability to have more and more things, use the iPad for more and more things. So I think it's incredible time to be a part of the iPad in any way. Nuno, what are your thoughts on what Josh has said so far and bringing down this programming environment onto the iPad?
I was just scrolling down the Swift Playgrounds page on Apple website, and I agree with Josh. They are shaping the coders for the next generation. I think for more old school programmers, this sounds like limited.
Right now.
For me in particular, I don't use Apple stuff exclusively. So one of our key concepts is that we deploy for Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS,
which is smart, which is very smart.
Every time it's possible, For instance, we don't have K7D on Android because it's a effect plugin. It's useless on Android unless you want to plug in a guitar and have the delay effect. It's kind of useless. So we didn't make the K7D and the LIM for Android. We tried to make Frames, and Frames is available for Android, but it lacks. Well, just you are both programmer. We use a framework, a C++ framework called Qt, and we program everything in Qt. This allows us to program faster because we program the backbone of the application on desktop, and then we start to test the particularities and develop the particularities on the device. So I only use Xcode when I need to go to the device. This allows us to iterate faster because we are always on the computer.
That makes sense.
And I gotta say too, I'm not the biggest fan of Xcode personally. Like I use it like for my stuff, but it is kind of clunky. And I feel like even though there are a lot of stuff, there's every year there's a new operating system. Every year there's problems. You know what I mean? I just recently I had issue with my Juice library. Like I updated,
crossing fingers.
Yeah.
I'm updating Xcode.
That's the one thing about Apple, dude, is the freaking software updates to the OS and developing environments. They're kind of scary because Apple continues to push they keep pushing the boundaries, but maybe they go a little bit too far every year.
Well, it's frustrating. And honestly, too, another thing is like just touching on the Swift language, is every single year deprecated. It's like, I can't, there's something that's changing, you know what I mean? And I think that does make it difficult. And I understand that they're trying to scale down the language to make it easier, by combining a lot of functionality, but it just makes it very difficult, and it gets very, very frustrating. I mean, I had an issue with Playbeat, actually. When we were working on Playbeat, I had an issue where we couldn't get something to work that was really important to the application. And me and one of the developers, man, we spent 2 days trying to figure out what it was. And it was because I had updated to the new version of Xcode. You know what I mean? And we didn't think it was going to be a problem. And so when I was uploading stuff to the repository, there was issues with how it was being done, and we ended up finding, dude. I mean, this also, just to let everybody know, this was also like in the framework library too. It wasn't like something that we actually had written. That's why we were like, what is the problem?
Exactly. It's not your code.
Right. So that was like, so like those kind of issues are very frustrating, so.
But that kind of comes with, with programming. But I just don't know anybody that updates stuff though as fast as Mac. Like, I mean, Visual Studio does not update like that. Visual Studio and ASP.NET, it does not update like that. And, if you're running a newer version of ASP.NET, there's a good chance that everything is going to be compatible with the other versions of ASP.NET. But of course, ASP.NET is a software stack that is much less complex than an entire operating system. But, still, that's the one thing I know that frustrates developers is Apple's kind of light speed going with their updates, both their operating system and their developing environments. I mean, I know users are getting a little bit of frustrating. I mean, if you looked at our last episode, you'd see that every single developer, the number one issue that they had, because I asked them, like, what is your major issues? The number one issue that everybody has is Apple's annual iOS updates. So I
would probably agree with that. That would probably be I would probably second that, because it is very frustrating.
Very, very frustrating.
And honestly, you could probably comment on this too. It makes it very difficult to stay motivated. You know what I mean? Because I feel like some days that's all I'm doing. Like, I'm getting no work done. I'm just trying to figure out why the thing that worked yesterday doesn't work anymore. You know what I mean? And obviously there's things that you can, obviously you could be something like, oh, I know I updated. I kind of figured this out because I knew this was going to happen. You know what I mean? But sometimes it could be something that you don't really realize even happened in the background of, what you were updating or something, and not even realize that was going on, so.
Oh, I know, man. This is why I left software development, sir. You guys are giving me PTSD here. Bringing back all this.
We have our struggles because the fact that we use a cross-platform framework means that sometimes the behavior is not consistent across all platforms, and sometimes we have to report bugs and wait for those bugs to be fixed, or patch the source code from Qt to actually fix a bug that has been already fixed in development but it's not ready in production. So we have our quirks too, but yeah, every time Apple releases a new operating system and the respective explodes.
Seriously, pour one out for all the developers every time a new iOS comes out. Come on, guys. Seriously, we need to pour one out for the respect. But yeah, guys, look, I don't want to take too much of your guys' time. I think we got through a bunch of different topics pretty good here. Because I did want to talk a little bit about that AudioKit release and things like that. Of course, I assume AudioKit is a big part of your guys' education and probably a part of your apps as well, since AudioKit does kind of find themselves in pretty much every single app. So definitely shout out to Matthew and shout out to the whole AudioKit Pro team over there and everything that they do.
Great guys.
Fantastic guys. Great team and great people. And of course, they've been around so long. I mean, they've helped so many people. It's I mean, again, they're part of what I was talking about earlier, where like, you and Josh and you and Matthew, Josh, I think are like a part of this fabric of like that kind of keeps the everything running in the background that nobody like really knows about, but that's just how it goes. And we very much thank people like yourself who do these freelancing and who talk to all these companies about these apps and the possibilities of what iPad can do, because it's going to be because of people like you as well that's really going to get the money on board, right? That's going to get the CEOs on board. That's going to get the big companies on board. It's going to be people like yourself building apps that show them what the capabilities and talking to these people behind the scenes in the company. So great work with you guys. Fantastic. I had a great time. Hopefully you guys did as well. We'll try to have a few more people on next episode. It always bounces back. Sometimes I have too many. Sometimes I only have a couple, but I really love to have at least a few people on here so we can really have an organic discussion and people can kind of jump in and chime in with their thoughts. So I think we did that today. So I really had a great time, guys. So Nuno, first, why don't you tell everybody, please, where can we find out more about you, sir?
Well, you can find more about Imaginando at www.imaginando.pt. I think it's better for you to write the link on the description below because otherwise people will not understand my spelling.
Yeah, we got links. We're gonna have links to everybody in the description, guys. Don't worry.
And the best way you can support our work is to buy our apps and our in-app purchases. We try to make them up to date every time we can, and for those apps that cannot evolve into purchasable items like extra for instance, DRC is not going to have new engines, but it's probably going to have new preset packs. So if you want to support us, buy our preset packs is the way we can keep moving and keep doing new stuff.
Absolutely, guys. Definitely support these developers. Definitely support these guys. Buy their apps and buy their presets and buy their packs, because, again, they are the backbone, guys. They are the people that are building the stuff that we use every day. So we really, really can't appreciate them enough. And remember, these guys are not millionaires, right? They're not IK Multimedia, right? There's so many independent developers like Imaginando and freelancers and independent people like Josh. So we just got to really support them as much as we can. So, all right, Josh, where can we find out more about you, sir?
Cool. Yeah. Well, first of all, shout out to Audio Modern. So we have the Playbeat 3 application out now on the iOS App Store. So you can visit audiomodern.com or just search for Playbeat 3 on the iOS App Store. And we have other apps on there too, like Riffer and GateLab and different things like that as well. So definitely check those out. As far as me personally, I'll give you two things you can check out. So if you're interested in checking out more of my development stuff, you can hit me up on Instagram. It's at musicdevlife is my Instagram. If you're interested in checking out my music, it's at static, STATIK LNK. So static link without the I. That's my music and my library. You can check it out on Tracklib as well, and stay tuned because I got a lot of stuff that I'm putting out. I have like I said, I have a distortion app. I'm really close to figuring out to finishing, which sounds great on like 808s and bass. I mean, it like knocks. It sounds really good, and that'll be on iOS, of course, as well. So I'm finishing that up. And then just if you're interested in sample packs and stuff like that too, got that going as well. So
man, I'm looking forward to that distortion app. I love me some distortion apps. I can't really get enough of those.
Funny story, just real quick. I know we're finishing up, but the reason that was made was because I didn't like the way 808 sounded on the iPad. So I wanted to make something that sounded better on the iPad speakers on mobile devices, because I feel like these days a lot of people are listening to music on their iPhone or their iPad, while they're working in the background or whatever. So,
absolutely, very interesting. Also 808 AudioKit has an 808 app. I don't know if you got to see that, but that's pretty interesting.
I have it, yes.
That's pretty interesting as well. So yeah, I love this stuff. Anything to do with hip hop and 808 stuff, I love, man. Sub bass. I'm into so many genres. So, but I love the new distortion apps, so that's for sure. So make sure you guys check that out. Josh is going to have that out pretty soon, and I will definitely be checking that out. So hopefully you guys will get a chance to see that. And yeah, I really appreciate everybody for joining us. We try to do these about once a month, every single month. Try to have on new people from the community, developers, content creators, anybody who's actually trying to do something in the community, trying to do something to help move the entire ecosystem forward. We want to definitely talk to them. So again, guys, thank you so much for being here. Of course, check out MobileMusicPro.com. Check out all our sample packs and all the stuff, all of our videos and stuff that we got going on as well. Of course, we got this new merch, freeze your tracks. Make sure to freeze your tracks, especially in CUBASIS on an iPad. You gotta be freezing your tracks. But all right, guys, thank you so much for being here. Until next time, everybody, keep talking music, and we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, Vortex here, and if you're not aware yet, we now have over 100 fully edited mobile music tutorial videos. And we make music every single Wednesday live on our channel right inside of CUBASIS on our iPad. Plus, we also have a bunch of free sample packs, guides, and more at our website at MobileMusicPro.com/free. And so if you are into that sort of thing, producing music on your iPhone or iPad, then definitely make sure to subscribe and check out the rest of the videos on the channel that we know you'll love.